Today on Locked On Phoenix Suns, Rich Paul, LeBron James agent, Bronny James agent, put the kibosh on everything related to LeBron James coming to the Valley. On today's episode, was it real? Was it ever real? What does it mean for the draft? We'll get into all of it. Let's go.
You are Locked On Suns, your daily Phoenix Suns podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And we're back. This is Locked On Phoenix Suns, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm Brendon Kleen, your host, covering the Suns for the past 7 seasons, credentialed media member, and the host of the Just Basketball Show. Welcome to Locked On Suns. We are here for you each and every day. Thank you for making us your first listen here on this Thursday. The news has kept rolling in. Great to have something like this to bring it all to you. Become an everydayer. Get locked onto the Phoenix Suns all off-season right here on the podcast, just by hitting that one button if you haven't already. Today's episode, guys, is brought to you by Gametime, the best place to buy a ticket for anything. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONNBA when you do to get $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. All right, joining us as he does every week here on this Thursday is Stephen PridGeon-Garner. He is a writer over at Bright Side of the Sun, at PHNX, at CHGO. And we have some news to hit on, Stephen, I think to say the least, where Rich Paul, the CEO of Clutch Sports, and of course an agent that represents many of the clients there, including LeBron for most of his career, and his son Bronny, who is now draft eligible, and also just tuck this away, Yusuf Nurkic and Josh Okogie as well. But he went on the record and said a whole bunch of stuff agents don't often say on the record at all. And he basically explained why Bronny has only worked out for the Lakers and the Suns, and said, I think most notably, this quote, which was, LeBron is also not going to Phoenix for a minimum deal. We can squash that now. He said there's no deal made that it's guaranteed of anybody drafting Bronny and getting LeBron. He said LeBron is off of the idea of having to play with Bronny. If it happens, it happens. If not, no big deal. And basically just blew up all the talking points that the national media has been rolling with for months now, Stephen. But I think from a Suns angle, this is pretty firm that the biggest dream Suns fans might have had might be dead. What was your reaction when you saw all this coming out and saw Rich just blowing it all up right in the open?
I think the first thing that came to mind was shocker that LeBron would not be signing anywhere for the veteran minimum. I think that was probably the biggest news to glean, because nobody just, wow, LeBron would not sign for the veteran minimum anywhere. That's such big news. I really can't believe people kind of were trying to run away with that. It just seems so unrealistic for so many different reasons. And you can talk about, if you're a pocket counter, you can talk about everything else that LeBron has going on outside of the court and talk about how that could supplement his income. That's not my business. That's not my cup of tea either. That's never the angle I look at things from. He would not be signing anywhere for the veteran minimum, especially at this point in his career. I don't ever really see it happening, to be honest, but I think that's probably the first thing to kind of bring things back to realistic lenses to look at things through. And then the next thing was, for me, just the uniqueness with which Rich Paul and a few of his former clients or clients from past seasons going through the draft process, the uniqueness with which they move in terms of working out for only specific teams. I think it's just something that's really unique to that particular space in terms of the approach to the draft. And I think it's something that kind of keeps players, especially with the power of NIL deals and everything that comes from their collegiate experience, puts them in a little bit of a position of power in terms of kind of trying to handpick and have a better idea of where they might end up, versus it being just an ambiguous type of scenario that you're walking into on draft night.
LeBron-wise, I think the part, honestly, separate from the pocket watching and the Nike deal and all the other things people bring up to try to count it all out and tip the scales and whatever. It's just content at the end of the day. But what always made me the most skeptical beyond all that is the image of doing that. LeBron, I mean, effectively, we can call it what it is, right? If he signed a deal like that, that's ring chasing. That's what Tracy McGrady did with the 2013 and 14 Spurs, or, whatever example you want to use. He's going to play more than McGrady, but that, for all intents and purposes, he would be joining onto this thing as this cheap discount piece to kind of put them over the top. And I just don't see a lot of players of LeBron's caliber being comfortable with the reputation hit, even if they all say that doesn't matter. That's a pretty low place to go if a team can't even pay you what you're worth. So that's the aspect of it I could never really fully buy into. So this doesn't hugely surprise me either. It's why I didn't spend a ton of time really believing and building out an offseason around this whole thing. I did say, and I still feel this way though, that a lot of this, we're technically in where free agency can begin. Pascal Siakam has reportedly agreed to a max extension or max new contract, whatever it is, with the Pacers. I think a lot of the other stuff is going to be held up by LeBron. And what Rich Paul did not say here is he even gave hypothetical examples related to Bronny that LeBron could leave the Lakers. That was actually concretely said as, again, it's a hypothetical, but he said it. So we're no closer to knowing where LeBron would go or anything else. I guess just to flesh it out from every angle, from a Suns standpoint, I'm sure there will be some Suns fans who maybe look at this, or other teams' fans even, who might not be able to give LeBron a lot of money. The Suns could theoretically, the only way now that they have an opening to get LeBron would be a sign and trade or some kind of trade. No, actually, I don't even think it's possible, right? Because LeBron makes more than Bradley Beal. It would have to be a sign and trade where LeBron takes a little bit of a dip to make less than or equal to what Beal makes, and then you trade Beal to the Lakers. Can you just tell me that that's not going to happen, and then we can flush that down the toilet?
Absolutely not happening.
Okay. All right. We'll get to Bronny and we'll get to kind of like the reporting of this, but just for the sake of it, since we're here, where do you think he goes? Do you think he goes back to the Lakers?
I think it's more than likely at this moment in time. Now, this could change by the time some people might hear this over the weekend, but as we're recording, I think it's more than realistic that he'll end up back with the Lakers at this moment in time. What about you? What you think? He's just such a Rubik's Cube to try to anticipate move-wise.
Well, like that's why this is so. It is. It's just. It's like I don't even know. It to me, part of why this was so interesting is because you mentioned they're so selective with the draft, and we'll get to Bronny, like I said, but usually even in the past years where LeBron has actually made it to free agency, he's been pretty good once the offseason comes around. We all hear the leverage and the leaks and the rumors during the season about what players he wants to acquire or any coaching and all that, but once the offseason comes around, they're pretty quiet, and then all of a sudden, some insider, the news is out, he's agreed to a new contract for this much and this many years, and then it's just over. So even saying anything like this is pretty fascinating. I guess it's just, I can't imagine a world where the Lakers draft Bronny and don't get LeBron. So I know they're saying that is out there. I can't imagine it. And I don't feel like he fits anywhere else so perfectly that he would uproot his whole life for it. That's honestly part of why the Phoenix thing, if there was any more financial flexibility, I would buy it, because I think he actually stylistically fits with what the Suns have, and it's close by. But the Knicks, the Sixers, any of these other teams, I just don't see it. I think it's the Lakers at this point, unless something dramatically changes.
And now I think the one caveat that we do still have to wait to see how the dominoes fall with it is the coaching search for the Los Angeles Lakers. Who's going to be that coach? Is it going to be somebody that LeBron jives with? Is it going to be somebody that LeBron doesn't have any experience with? Is he going to respect that coach more than anything? Now, I think that, and that's why I kind of preface with saying at this moment in time, I think he returns to the Lakers. But depending on how that shakes out ultimately, things could sway either further in the direction of him being 100% going back to the Lakers or less than what I'm deeming is like 85 to 90% that he ends up going back to the Lakers. So we'll see in the coming days, but there's a lot of news to come, needs to say with the finals ending.
Well, right? I mean, his whole outlook on this, but I think, like you're saying, the dominoes between now and then, it's the draft and what happens with Bronny, it's the coaching search, and it's, frankly, I mean, it's probably a lesser impact, but D'Angelo Russell has this player option, and depending on what he does and what the smoke signals are for what the Lakers might be able to do with the trade with him, I wouldn't be surprised if that impacted how LeBron sees the whole situation even more. If it still feels like they're going to be about equivalent quality-wise of a team as they have been the past 2 years, I'm sure he's going to look at that and not feel great about it. So we'll see. But all of this also seems to spell out that the Suns' interest in Bronny has been genuine all along. I don't know if that would be at 22. Talked about that a little bit yesterday, but this report, or not even report, this interview with Rich Paul himself backs up what Shams Charania had reported earlier in the offseason, that the Suns truly like Bronny as a person, as a player, as a prospect. They want him on their team if the value is right. So let's talk about what that means, why that might be the case, and more coming up next. First, today's show brought to you by the Gametime app. Gametime is an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets faster and easier. Prices on the Gametime app actually go down the closer it gets to first pitch. So check out MLB tickets. Needless to say, the Diamondbacks are finally getting back on track. That's very nice to see. Worth watching again. Looking like the team we all fell in love with during that World Series run last year. But most of all, on Gametime, you get tickets, prices up front. You get flash deals and zone deals to take advantage of if you're keeping an eye on things. Lowest price guarantee, you get credited 110% of the difference if you buy tickets and find them for cheaper elsewhere. Gametime is all about being transparent, getting you the price that is fair, that is realistic, that is right, and that is affordable. So take the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets this summer with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNBA when you do to get $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code LOCKEDONNBA, LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. All right, Stephen, so let's talk about the Bronny side of this. Of course, he's only worked out for the Suns and the Lakers. That's kind of been driving all of the intrigue here. I thought the interesting part that you were kind of hinting at in that last segment, to me, was the same, which is this is maybe partially about LeBron and all that stuff, but it is also about what I think Rich Paul identified in this interview, which is that two-way contracts and non-guaranteed deals and G League run and all that stuff is, in his opinion, not the best way for a player to develop. Let's just hang there for a second and we'll get into the Sun side of it. But I can't lie. Reading that, my first thought was, well, then why did he leave college? If you're worried about maximizing what's going to be absolutely best of the best for him improving, maybe USC, I don't know the details, new coach, new situation there, transfer, do whatever you need to do. But I would say continuing to compete against NCAA competition is probably the best thing for him. So now they're in this no man's land where they got to just kind of work their leverage and flex their muscles to get him somewhere they want to get him, when I don't think it's the best no matter where it is in the NBA.
Yeah, I first of all, I don't necessarily fully agree with the two-way contract and G League time spent down there. I don't agree with Rich fully in terms of that not being a clear-cut way for development, especially if you're leaving college early. I just personally, just quickly on my side of things, I feel like especially if you're going to a team that has an established G League affiliate that's under the same umbrella, running the same system, style things, going under the same principles that the professional level team is, there's a lot of growth that can come from that. And I think there's a handful of examples for the teams that have their own direct affiliate that have seen the benefits of that in terms of skill development. Especially if you're drafting a player that's a kind of stash type of player that's not going to come in and stamp a spot within the main rotation of a team that's contending, like the Phoenix Suns desire to, from head coach to every player on the roster. So I think that's something that I don't disagree with.
I would say Toronto and Oklahoma City to me jump out as maybe the two best examples where they play similarly, they have overlap between their staffs, and they've been able to develop players that way for sure. Siakam all the way to, Lou Dort, right? Like that it does pay off. You're absolutely right. So
yes,
I guess the part of it to come to Phoenix with it is that it maybe feels the most true to me of all of this is the bottom line seems to be, from Rich Paul's standpoint, probably from LeBron's standpoint too, is we want him to go somewhere where he's wanted. And that I get. Now, 100%. It's impossible to talk through it without people having ulterior motives because, okay, the Lakers clearly want him. Do they want him for him or do they want him for LeBron? I don't know. But it feels like the Suns maybe truly want Bronny for Bronny's sake. John Gambadoro reported this week that the Suns could look to trade down or maybe back into the second round in some kind of way. I think to me that's the most likely place that he gets picked because even in this article, Rich brings up Dallas at 58 and the Lakers at 55. He said he's not putting leverage on the Lakers to take him at 17. I think that they might be more realistic about where he could get picked than even the media has been. And if he is a second-round prospect, the Suns could go get him somewhere else, trade back, trade down, trade back into the second round, like I said. I don't know how much you've watched him. I got to go see him at ASU. That was probably what I trust the most. He played a lot. He played point guard because Collier and Ellis were out in that game. What do you think of him as a player? Do you feel like it makes sense as a developmental coin flip to try to bring him in? They have a G League team now and see what they can get out of him?
Yes, and I do just kind of before I get to that particular part of the answer, I do feel like the Suns and the Lakers have had genuine intentions with Bronny. For one, with the head coaching search with the Lakers, I felt like Hurley coming through from UConn, excuse me, if he was to have accepted the job by the end of last week for the Lakers, I think naturally having a blue chip for him to invest in and for there's someone on a very similar timeline with him made a lot of sense in terms of projecting forward past the LeBron James and Anthony Davis prime years, how the roster is going to evolve over that time as well. I think that made a lot of sense there. Now, bringing it back to the Suns context, I think naturally them not having point of attack defenders pretty much since they traded Mikal Bridges and Cam Johnson for Kevin Durant, that's been a roster flaw for them in terms of a player that's going to be playable in playoff scenarios. Naturally, starting to invest in a player like that while also having your own G League affiliate established and looking to get rocking going into this upcoming NBA season, I think all of those things matter. So it makes sense in context past just the obvious caveat that LeBron might entertain the idea of playing with his son. Now you get past that, and then you start looking at what he could bring to the team. I think it's the point of attack defense. One of the most intriguing comps for him was the Davion Mitchell one for me. And I feel like that is something that's accurate. Davion is a point guard by stature, but he can certainly play off the ball. He's not the tallest basketball player, so he's kind of limited in what he can do offensively and even defensively at times, but the athleticism and the general urgency and care factor that comes with the athleticism he brings to the defensive end of the floor, causing chaos, getting deflections galore, picking up the ball 94 feet, all of those energy, effort type of things that TJ McConnell, Peyton Pritchard got a lot of attention for in these past playoffs. Bronny James can start to kind of carve out a niche for himself in the NBA in that same kind of role, in that specific type of lens. Not a star player, a fringe rotation type of player, but a player that can have impact in short spurts. So that's kind of what I see him at.
So to me, I agree with all of that. The skill set has made sense to me all along. I just wonder/worry, will the impact of him getting to that filled out portion of his career, will that happen when Kevin Durant is still in his prime? Will that happen when Durant or Beal are even on the team? That's the part that I question, where he's 19. We all agree he's fairly raw, at least on the offensive end, and has a ways to go to grow his game. Are you drafting him for a team need you have now? I mean, if Book's around, Bronny seems like a nice fit with Book kind of no matter when that happens, but it's a little bit of a moving target. I guess on the positive side overall for Bronny, though, and one of the things I've stuck with the whole time is, yes, there are examples, Marcus Jordan, Sharif O'Neal. There's guys where it has not always worked out. But I'm willing to bet, not only from the genetic standpoint, which, I'm not a scientist, but more so the investment, the resources, the being around it aspect. I just think it's more likely that type of guy is going to hit than your average second-round pick who's raw, who's whatever. I just believe that somebody with a dad who has put as much into his body and training as LeBron has and all that type of stuff, Bronny has every resource possible. I'm more content betting on that than some guy we've never heard of who we have no idea of where he's at with all of that. So Patrick Mahomes, Steph Curry, I can give you other examples that can prove my point that it can work, right? So that's kind of where I'm at. Is I would bet on him hitting his ceiling more times out of 100, let's say, than even, let's say, a Davion Mitchell or whoever else you might want to compare him to. So that's kind of where I'm at. I wouldn't hate him on the team if he comes in the right range. I would say, frankly, anything in the second round, I wouldn't really hate it. But obviously, most people have him in the 45 to 60 range. So, great. Even better if the value's more in that realm. But
yep.
Let's talk about how much this all caught the Suns off guard. It's big news in the NBA. Fans are eating it up. It's surprising to see an agent do this, but how much does this actually change for the Suns? We'll get into that coming up next. First, today's show brought to you by PrizePicks. With PrizePicks this summer, you can turn $10 into $1,000 in a single game watching your favorite sports all off-season long. Make a PrizePicks lineup in as few as 60 seconds, setting 2 to 6 player stat projections with more or less. And just like that, you're locked in. They have lowered projections on Tuesdays to help you get a win. Entry fee returns if you lose on Fridays. Join the 5 million active members of PrizePicks, America's #1 fantasy sports app, today. The finals are over, but the WNBA season rolls on. Established stars like Breanna Stewart, who Stephen and I just watched, lose to the Phoenix Mercury on Tuesday night, or the up-and-comers like Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese you've been hearing so much about. All of them can help you turn $10 into $1,000, winning up to 100 times your cash watching them ball out. Download the PrizePicks app. Visit PrizePicks.com today. Use the code LOCKEDONNBA when you make your first deposit to get it matched up to $100. That's PrizePicks, promo code LOCKEDON for a first deposit match up to $100. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy. All right, Steven. So quickly to close things out here, LeBron felt like a pipe dream, I think, from a Suns standpoint all along. The listeners, viewers on YouTube, feel free to @ me. Let me know if I stepped over my skis at all, but I think I've been reasonable about it. But we know how Medishbia can be. And I think part of why maybe Suns fans or even national NBA fans around the country who just see the Suns from a distance were willing to buy into this whole thing is that dude seems like somebody who would actually try to pull something off. Matt Ishbia, Durant, Beal, Ayton, firing coaches, doing all this and that, Kalia Copper in the Mercury side, building a facility, renovating all this. Of course he would try to get LeBron James. How much do you think the Suns actually allowed themselves to believe this? Or do you think it was just made up in fan and media land?
I err on the side of it being more in fan and media land. Naturally, you attach LeBron James' name to anything, it's going to get some capacity of attention. And naturally, with the Suns having an early playoff exit, extremely premature, some might say, that lends itself to a lot more speculation, lends itself to a lot more fantasy land type of takes. No disrespect to anybody that put stock into it, but I just never truly believed it. I just felt like it was unrealistic. So that's kind of where I've been. That's where I remain, and I remain unmoved and unsurprised. But I do feel like at the bare minimum, Matt Ishbia and company likely did their due diligence and just tapping the sign to see, because that's what you do when you're in the business that they're in. You exhaust all potential options, especially with the minimum wiggle room that they have. They have to do themselves a solid and just tapping the door, leaving a little note at every door that they possibly can just to get some type of information. Now, what happens from that, we don't know. Everything does not have to be news. This is just, run of the mill in terms of them doing their jobs thoroughly and genuinely. So that's just kind of where I'm at with that. I do feel like that portion of it is true, but I never felt like it had any legs in any real capacity.
First of all, I don't know what world you're living in. Everything does have to be news. I can't believe you would say something so crazy like that we can just let things happen and then that's just what they are. But to me, look, I feel like the fact that the Suns said that Rich Paul said specifically verbatim in a quoted article on ESPN that I would imagine, just kind of knowing how these things tend to work, this was probably Jonathan Gavoni of ESPN, who covers the draft, has been probably reporting some things about Bronny, which he has been on NBA Today this week. He appeared, which is rare for him, and he said a whole thing about, uncertainty around Bronny and the way he's being handled and this and that. And at some point, Rich Paul just said, you know what, F it, I need to just set the record straight. And he called Jonathan Gavoni personally. That's my guess. And then he was like, wait, Gavoni's like, hold on, you want me to be on the record? You want all this on the record? And Rich was like, yes. And he said, okay. And he wrote an article, and that's where we got here. But the fact that in the middle of all of that, he said LeBron is also not going to Phoenix for a minimum deal. We've all watched the NBA long enough, consumed the nonsense season that we're in for long enough to know that if it's not even a glimmer of reality, these guys just ignore it. He didn't say LeBron is not going to go to the Toronto Raptors on a minimum contract. You know what I mean? Because why would you need to say that? I understand part of it is the Bronny workout and leading people to believe it, but he was so specific with a minimum deal and all this. It just leads me to believe that there's an awareness that was an option. There's an awareness that people think that was an option. And if there's smoke, there's fire to me. So I would tend to agree with you that some level of conversation was probably had. And maybe something changed. Maybe something was just reinforced by Rich Paul and LeBron James that, hey, we love it. Great. Phoenix sounds like a nice place to live in the winter, but no thank you. So I think from the Suns standpoint, it was definitely a real desire, but I would hope they're not dumb enough to build their whole offseason around this. And I did an episode about it all along, that if they were just getting strung along for leverage from Bronny or anything, they couldn't afford to be sitting there with egg on their face when it was all said and done, that they let this consume their offseason and they didn't scout other players. They didn't think about other minimum targets and on and on. And I think from all indications with the Colex stuff and everything else, I feel like they've handled it the right way. All right, we have a couple minutes. I got to get your scouting report of Footprint Center. You were there last week since the last time we recorded. Thoughts on our lovely city of downtown Phoenix, which probably melted your face off. Thoughts on our lovely renovated arena. What do you got for us? How was your maiden voyage to the land of the Suns and Mercury?
Well, for full context, I left Chicago. It was about 90 degrees with like 85% humidity. So
okay. Not much different probably then.
No, not too much. But I will say it was definitely hot, a dry type of heat. But it was very comfortable. I love the way, first of all, that the city embraces the Phoenix Mercury in terms of publicity. Banners all over the downtown area, around the Footprint Center, 180 degrees. Everywhere you turn, there's some type of purple and orange in some capacity. And I think that's awesome. The Footprint Center was dope. I like the vibe in the arena. I like to assess basketball environments when live basketball is happening, and the way that the PA announcer and the crowd play off of each other during Mercury games is a very unique experience. It gets loud in the Footprint Center to the extent that I didn't hear the referee whistles a couple times. Yeah,
that Liberty game last night, there was a moment when the challenge on Diana's push foul, which was ridiculous on Phoebich, and then it got reversed. The crowd yelled louder for that, I swear to you, than most Suns memories I have from this past season. And that was just a challenge. I'm like, you guys are crazy.
Yeah, yeah. So, and for context, I was at the game when the reigning back-to-back champions came to town, the Las Vegas Aces. That game was a loud one, a very loud one, actually.
Yeah.
And just to kind of, like I said, just get a vibe check in the sense of how the crowd is, how engaged are they in the game. It feels like everybody that was there was certainly engaged in the game. Great experience. It would be in my top probably 5 in terms of basketball experiences as a fan going to watch a game. It ranks up there for me, and I think that's a high bar to be set, especially for an early regular season game. There's no stakes involved. Commissioner's Cup, but I don't think at that point either one of those two had a chance in advancing to the championship round of that. So, yeah, it was a great experience. I'm looking forward to the next handful.
Also not positive how many WNBA fans are noticing the Commissioner's Cup stuff. I'd like to believe they are.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not positive. So I think you're right. I think I'll tell you from experience that was absolutely normal, and the Mercury crowd is great. And I hope you have your Mighty Mercury chant down now. You're taking 2, missing 2, making 2 if it's the Mercury. You gotta. There's a whole. It's like going to Catholic church and it's the kneeling and the standing and all that. It's a whole ritual when you're in there, and I think it catches people off guard the first time, but definitely a great crowd. I think the city is loving this team between Cloud and Copper and even Allen again, I know you weren't at that game, but on Tuesday she broke out and everybody was losing it for her. Obviously BG looking back to normal and being on the floor again as her full self. Like it's been a great year, but we'll have to see. Maybe the Suns crowd will be kind of a letdown when you're like, hold on, there's twice as many people in here. Why are they not? Why are they not feeling like it? But
I've been told things about the shift with Suns crowds over the last couple of years since the 2021 playoff run. So I'll leave that at that for those people that know. If you know, you know. But I'm aware.
Look, if the one way I think they can get that magic back is bring Campaign back on whatever contract is necessary and have him hit like 3 3-pointers in a quarter, and that building will be back to normal. I feel like his departure or his falling off a little bit as a player is direct relationship to the noise. But all right, we'll have to see. You'll be back like a month from now, I think, right? So we'll see if the heat just slides off your back the same way it did in June come July for a WNBA All-Star. I'm not so sure. I feel a little hesitant about welcoming everybody here during the middle of all that, but we'll see how it goes. All right, that'll wrap us up for the day, guys. LeBron to the Suns, dead for now. We'll see what happens. More news to come, I'm sure. We'll break down the draft the next week or so, guests planned, all that stuff. So hit follow or subscribe, get those episodes and more throughout the offseason right in your feed each and every day. I will catch you guys tomorrow.